I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm Jacob with Very Good Knife Company, and today we're going to be doing knife handles. So, let's see if I can get this. Not much better. So yesterday, you guys watched me finish grind, well, rough and finish grind, all of the Heritage. The day before, I ground the Traditions, and I finished ground everything yesterday. And then today, I have got caught up on all the handle materials, and I'll just go over what we've got. So, I forgot to bring it again today, but this week we're going to be dropping the Heritage, and this is it. I'll be right back. I'm going to turn this down. All right, anyhow, we've got Grip Tech, orange Grip Tech, the Blaze Orange, and instead of the yellow liners, I went with a dark red liner. I think it's going to look a little more appealing to most. Yellow is so niche that every time I do it, I end up having to sit on them for a minute. So, I also decided on the red micarta, and then double green micarta. This is the last of what I have of that, so I'll have to order another sheet of double green. But basically what I've got laid out here is we've got 18 blades. We've got 18 blades. 6 of them are Traditions, 6 of them are Heritage in 5/32. 6 of them are Heritage in 1/8 inch. And of the 1/8 inch, 3 are Nitro V and 3 are ADCR V2. So what we're going to do is 2 Traditions will be the orange with red liner Grip Tech. 2 of them will be the double green, and 2 of them will be the red. The same goes for those 6 Heritage in 5/32. We'll get 2 with orange Grip Tech, 2 with double green, and 2 with red. And then for those, for the 1/8 inch, we'll do the same thing. We'll just split them up, ADCR V2 and Nitro V. So there'll be one of each color that we just talked about. So what we got to do now, and all you've missed me doing is pairing and facing handles, or cutting, pairing, and facing handles. So I cut all this stuff out from sheets, and then paired it all up, squared it all up, and then faced it. And what I mean by that is the face of the handle is now radiused square. I've got a mark to that there's no guesswork. I want them relatively square. I don't want them leaning backwards on the knife. What I mean is the forward angle, or the front of the face of the handle. I don't want it leaning backwards. I would rather it lean forward slightly. I would rather it be nice and square to that plunge line. But if not, leaning forward is better than leaning backwards. So that's why I put that little tiny mark on each one of these little pieces, or the pair of scales. So all that's left to do is to fit all these up. And these are all going to be essentially satin finish, belt satin finish Gen 3s. They're not going to have Corby screws. They're going to have removable screws. And so what I have to do now is to clean all that, or wipe all that oil off that I put on them yesterday. And then we'll take a alcohol wipe and clean one side of the tang of that oil, and we'll go ahead and temporarily tack them to these handle scales. We'll get started on that here in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and get through wiping these heritage will leave the tradition, because I can only do so much on my cart as far as handles go. We're going to do them 6 at a time. We'll just go ahead and fit up 6 at a time, and as we fit 6, then we'll put them aside and we'll fit another 6. So from here, where's my bottle? There it is. Grabbing some alcohol, and I just don't want any oil on the tang, because then nothing will stick to it ever. And all I'm going to do is wipe the side facing up, which is always the opposite side of the logo, always. And just give everything a quick little wipe. That's all we're doing. So I'm just using some super glue, and all I'm gonna do with that is put a couple of little dabs, just like that, little micro dimples, and then stick it on the handle scales. Now I'm making sure that it is where I want it. That's about as far up as I want it to go. And then I'll stick it in the vise, just like that. And this goes as fast as I can run with it, pretty much, because once I get one done, I will then go ahead and scribe it. And I like to scribe them before they even leave this bench, because I'll forget to do it. And I'll show you why here in just a minute, why I scribe them. A couple little dots of glue. Just like that. And while I let that one sit there and get all stuck, I'll go ahead and work on the next one. Put that one aside. Scribe. That's all we're doing. What's up, Zach? No, not quite. I didn't really have a whole lot in mind with the Revelation when I did it, other than it was just an off-the-cuff design, because the original one was just a custom. But it is definitely a nice hunting knife if you were to use it for that. The only reason I wouldn't enjoy it for a hunting knife is because of the choil, the sharpening choil. What's up, Chuck? So the Grip Tech, I won't end up doing the excess cutting. I might, I don't know. But G10 ruins bandsaw blades. And I had to cut a whole sheet of it up yesterday to do all these Grip Tech. And rather than trying to cut the super thin G10 liner stuff with the metal bandsaw, which is usually what I use for cutting G10 or pretty much anything like carbon fiber, harder than micarta, I'll use the metal bandsaw, the same metal bandsaw that I use to cut the blanks out. But instead of doing that, super thin liners, I actually just, how many do I have left? Just one? I just used the regular bandsaw because my blade was starting to get old anyway. So I marked it. It cuts a little more gentle and cleaner on the super thin G10. So we're just going to do 6 this round. Like I said, 6 at a time because I'll show you in a second. So I scribe the lines on. If I'm not going to cut the excess off, I'll still scribe the lines on, and that way when I have everything put together, I know where that tang is. And I don't end up pushing too hard and then finding that tang and creating a gouge that I'll have to grind out by removing more handle than I wanted to. So just to the drill press for this process. All we're trying to do now is drill our screw holes. So now we got some screw holes. That's all we're doing there. Once they're drilled, then I can detach these are going to split apart on me and be a pain in the ass. Sometimes they do. I don't want the glue to stick like really super. My super glue to be super glue. That's all I want it to do. I want it to hold off that much so I can just give it a little push, pop it off. And I want extra room on my cart so I can spread everything out like this as I go. You may have noticed if you were watching yesterday's while I was grinding all these that they were stuck in there tight on that towel. I leave them on the towel because I don't want to scratch the finish. That way you just work their butts off to do it. That applies to when we're doing handle work. Pop. That's it. So now we've got a couple little dots of glue on the tang to clean up. I'll show you how I get rid of that here in just a second. Like that. Sometimes they're stubborn like that. I have to grab my scribe and give the handle give the tang a smack and they'll come undone. They still always come undone. I have had some that I put too much glue on and I'll pull a chunk out of the micarta. Those always get tossed to the side or used for something else. If they're thick enough, I'll just grind it out, finish the knife. If it has removable screws, I'll finish it and then pull it back apart, put liners under it after the handle's already finished to thicken it up. That's pretty rare. I usually don't have that problem. They usually come apart just like that. So now we've got all these marked scale sets right? Just like so. And I'm curious. I have to know. I doubt that my bandsaw is going to want to cut all this because, like I said, the last thing that I cut with it was G10, and the blade is most definitely toast. I know it's not going to cut the micarta, so I'm not even going to try. And the vacuum all though, because this grip tech makes a mess. All this junk that's all over the top of the bandsaw is all grip tech. Micarta just makes a little dust, but grip tech is, well, it is what it is. See all that? It's all grip tech. Cutting. We'll run it as long as it'll run. So it was bad enough yesterday that I used it to cut the single layers of super thin G10. Now I'm cutting double layers. And I can feel it deteriorate as I'm cutting. Because these teeth on this bandsaw blade are not hardened. They're not meant to. See, it's not wanting to bite anymore. Now it's throwing sparks. It's unhappy. It's protesting. Come on, get me through this one. We'll change the bandsaw blade here in just a minute. Yeah, that's about all it's got right there. I'm having to push. When you have to push too hard, that's when you hurt yourself. Right, now I really need to change this bandsaw blade so I can then cut the rest of these handles down, because it's not that big of a problem to have to grind off a bunch of excess grip tech or even G10. Actually, it's extremely soft and really easy to grind off. That's why it wasn't that big of a deal. Again, for the rest of the day, I won't be swapping back and forth just so I can cut some excess G10 off or excess grip tech. I'll just grind it off for the rest of the ones, but since this blade was what I used last, we used it for those two. At least those two will go a little easier. Less messy, really. Alright, let me grab another blade. So I actually order all my blades from Supercut directly, and Supercut is what they sell at Harbor Freight, and they're actually some of the best bandsaw blades for like an organic material or softer material. They are fantastic. This won't take just a second. Alright. Here, tighten it up like a bandage string. That'll do. They're red. The dark red liners. They look pretty good, I think. I was gonna do yellow, but I didn't like. I've not been like, it's not been growing on me. Mind the one that I made. All right, now we're gonna cut the rest of these handles, these micarta handles, and you'll see they go really fast and it cuts like it's supposed to. Brand new blade. See how much mess micarta doesn't make? Not even dust off the clean. You can see. That's all we're doing right there. And this will just a minute. So we only have a couple more handles to do. Bear with me. This process is a little screechy, noisy. Just like that. And I leave that little piece right there. I'll show you why here in just a second. So now when we go to the grinder, there just won't be a whole lot to grind off. Because I'm leaving almost nothing next to that line that we scribed around. There we go. That's all of them. This is a good color scheme. I like this. They look nice sitting here. All right, now we're gonna go to the, I'm gonna put this back in the belt, that's tagged along. Now we're gonna go to the wire wheel and take off those little dabs of glue on the tang. See there, little micro pieces of micarta up front. We'll just run it over that wire wheel and get rid of them. And I do the same thing on the other side, just in case there's any junk on the other side. But that's all. Now it's clean. So we'll wire wheel all these tangs. I guess doing 6 at a time today is going to be easy for live streams. You guys will get to see a couple of times. For those who are jumping in and jumping out, jumping back in, you get to see different things. That's all we're doing though, is we're just wire wheeling those little glue dots off of the tang from where we tacked up Tomako. 2 more. And in some cases, all of the glue or most of the glue sticks to the micarta and not the tang. I still wire wheel it just in case. There we go. Now, let's go back over here to the bench and get this out of my way. I'm going to turn this back on so as not to have to listen to it anymore. Now those little, that little piece that I left on the end, I still have to get these apart and there's nowhere else around it. You see up here at the top with certain handles, the spine will kind of sag, and you know, when you line them up, there's a little bit in the front. I don't usually worry about cutting that off. I just want to make sure that inside the handle is cut off and all that excess on the end is cut off. That little bit that I leave there is so I can use my scribe and pop the handles apart, because if you look, it takes a little chunk out. So if I were to do that right here, it might leave a chunk that I couldn't get out without having to grind a whole bunch. Now, in this stage, these handles are still, or the scales are flat, but we've got some little raised spots where the glue was. It's no big deal. We'll get that here in just a second. Before we do, I'll go ahead and go split everything. Even the G10 doesn't take as much effort because it's a little stiffer, but the same thing, same concept. It always takes a little chunk out, so I always leave the end right there so I can split them and not have to worry about screwing up the handles. I did learn that the hard way. Some of them come apart pretty easy, just like that. That one was the one I was talking about. I think it was coming apart. It definitely was, because it took no effort to get it apart. Now, G10, even though it is harder than micarta, it is not the same consistency. So if you put G10 on the belt here, it'll disappear. It'll disappear faster than you want it to. And what I've got to do now is kind of clean up these scales on the inside. The easiest way I've found to do that is with the belt here. Like so. Like that. Now they're flat. Let's get the glue can. That's it for those. Now we'll come over to my aluminum plates over here. Let me take the mask off again now. We'll come over to the aluminum plates, and this is where I like to do some sanding. I also use the top of this plate to put some adhesive back sandpaper on, because the plate's nice and flat. It's got a couple dings here and there, but it's not a big deal. It is still pretty flat. But again, if I were to do that, what I just did with the micarta on the G10 would disappear. These liners are extremely thin. You see it's red there, orange there. These are liners, and they're really thin. And I don't want to make them disappear. So I'll just put them on the plate here and flatten them up this way. And this right here will show me flat. See there, that's not quite as flat. What's up, Rock Lobster? That's pretty much it right there. So this won't bother me because a lot of it is that little tab right there. And now this is nice and cleaned up. It does have some durability differences. I don't like the way that G10 feels. I also despise working with G10. I dislike the way it works more than I dislike the way it feels, because like a good blasted G10 feels pretty good. I still like the way micarta feels over it. Just me. It's just a preference thing. But as far as working with it goes, it sucks. And everybody else out there is like, what? So you can't run G10 through the router like I do micarta. It's fiberglass. It absolutely shreds and ruins the bits faster than the carbon fiber. So that drives me insane. There we go. Nice flat set. My favorite handle material is going to be micarta. Specifically, this double green micarta from Macecraft. That's probably my favorite stuff. Micarta and G10 are both equally, like, almost indestructible. They lost my balance. They are pretty similar, but I'm not much of a wood fan, mainly because of the durability issues that I've had with every kind of wood known to man. And I've used everything. Extremely, extremely exotic woods. And they're nice. I like them. I don't dislike wood, and I don't dislike wood on knife handles. In fact, I've done some signature series with wood. I just think it has a place. And for me, a work knife isn't the place for the wood, because it doesn't hold up to being dropped like micarta does. It doesn't hold up to chemicals or oils, things of that nature, like micarta does. So as far as like a work knife goes, I won't choose wood, but I will give you wood if that's what you want. That's not a problem at all. I'm not anti-wood, that's for sure. I just think it has a place. It's like everything else. Nice and flat. Bolts or screws? Well, I use screws for everything. Some are Corby screws and some are Gulso bolts. They're still screws, same thing, 832 threads. It's all the same thing to me. But the Corby screws, I'll show you here in just a second. This is my last one to get nice and flat. The Corby screws that I use, well, all Corby screws, I cut the head off after they're set, and then they just look like a pin. So they're not removable. Nice and flat. So they're not removable, but they do look better, in my opinion. I like the look of, yeah, that's the problem with wood, Zach, it swells. But I like these Corby screws. See, they still thread together, and they've got a flat head and an extra wide head, right? So when I countersink these in, about that much stays in. The rest of this is sticking out, gets cut off, and ground down flat. That ends up looking like a pin, because all you're seeing is the top of that flush cut head right there. But it's not. It's got shoulders and it's mechanically bonded. That's what I want. I want a mechanical bond on the knives. And that way, I don't have to worry about them coming apart with or without glue. It doesn't really matter. Once they're screwed on, they're screwed on. They're good. right, now, Tim Goats asked, what is micarta made of? So there's different kinds of micarta, but as a whole, phenolic resins, canvas phenolic resin is essentially resin and canvas, layered canvas. So originally, if I'm not completely wrong, and I'm pretty positive on my history of this, but micarta was made for bushings and bearings, not bearings specifically like roller bearings, but so micarta would be cut into like bushing size, and once it is packed full of grease, it becomes self-lubricating because all the fibers are then what they do is they would have pressure packed it full of oil, grease, the micarta, and it'll take it because it's just resin with canvas, layered canvas, right? And as the micarta wears, it'll release its own grease. Self-lubricating bearing or bushings. So I'm going to grab a Gulso bolt so I can measure head depth. Is what we got to do now is countersink these. Once they're countersunk, then we can go ahead and put them together. And this is what the countersink does. Cuts a shelf down in there, a shoulder, and makes it to where our screw heads fit below the surface. And I'm using the screw head over here just to make sure that I'm where I want to be. I don't want to go too shallow because then I'll end up grinding on the screw head. I'd rather it be just slightly recessed than proud. That'll do. One. Now we gotta do the rest. And this process with Corby screws, I have a the pilot on my countersink here is set to a depth. Because all that matters with the Corby screws is that I can tighten the screw all the way down without bottoming out on the screw post itself or the base of the screw, as long as my screw post passes through this scale, the tang of the knife, and into the other scale. See, I want it sticking out on the other side to go into the other scale. That way it locks the scales together without the other screw, right? But I've lost my train of thought. With Corby screws, I have my depth set on my pilot. So then I just run it right down to the deck. I'm done. I don't have to sit here and measure tolerances. But with these Gulso screws, I have to make sure the depth is right from the top, not the bottom. With my pilot being the same, then every hole is going to be the same no matter how thick the material is. But given that these screws, we're just trying to mount these screws down just below flush with the material, then it matters how thick the material is. So the pilot makes no difference in terms of the length of the pilot. Unless I were to run, 100 knives in one particular sheet of micarta, you could set it up that way. It's not that big of a deal, but for the most part, I'm running several different sheets, or different cuts from several different sheets, and the thickness always varies a little. what I could do is run a stop on top of the cutter. And I've thought about doing that. One day when I get myself a lathe to do more machining on, then I will make myself a nice solid carbide cutter. And you see all that little fluff at the top? I'm going to design a cutter that stops at the top on the depth that I need it to, the depth of this screw head. That way it's measured from the top. Doesn't matter how thick the material is. Our screw head will sit down in there about like that, and the cutter will stop and cut the top. Cut the little fluffy junk off of the top. Maybe that makes sense to you guys. Maybe it's total bonkers. I don't know. It's just things that I think about. So the Gulso belts, this takes an extra, just a little bit to get the heads right. However, unlike the Corby screws, once these screws are mounted, the sides of the scales are pretty much done. All I got to do is just clean them up a little. Whereas the Corby screws, when I cut the heads off, I have to finish the sides of the handles because of the Corby screw heads. So, to me, they're about the same. Trade-off is equal. They each have their advantages. I guess if you're into the, which I am, into the finished look of the Corby screws, you would definitely prefer that. I wanted all of these hunting and skinning knives to be serviceable, so you can take them apart and clean all the blood out of them, right? That's why I put removable screws in all these. Look at how much of a mess the grip tech makes. Even just drilling it. Insane to me. There we go. Just like that. Countersunk. It's a lot of blades. 2,000 blades. So I know this part is kind of a little boring. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. No insult if it isn't. But it's got to be done. Two more handles, and then we'll go put all these together, and they'll be ready to go to the grinder and do some actual finishing. Before I do that, though, I'm gonna do this same process with all the other blades sitting on the bench. That way I can just finish them all together. Because I don't mind going back and forth with machines, but I don't like swapping belts every 2 seconds either. That drives me crazier than having to walk around the shop all day. There we go. All right, one more set. One more set. Deeper on that one than I wanted to go. Right. Okie dokie. Everything is ready to be assembled now. That's all it took. Wasn't much, right? So let's go to the bench over here where I've already got a bunch of screws. Let's set you guys up right here. So, now, we'll just put it all together. And these screws are not the screws that they're going to be finished with. They're not the final screws. I will use these screws to finish the knife, then take it all apart, put brand new screws in it. There you are. And these are just Torx head screws. Come on. And they'll go together just like this. Voila. That's it. And that'll be an easy finish job. Posts and then screws. So no glue in these handles at all. They're not meant to have glue. They're meant to be taken apart to clean. These are serviceable handles. Like that. When I put the final screws in here, the screws will be black. They will not be silver. I have tried on multiple occasions, multiple knives, multiple materials, and I have yet to find material that is, well, I think I did silver screws in one or two things, but for the most part, I don't know, they don't look amazing to me. Certain things. I did have silver screws in my heritage with the orange grip tech for a couple of days, and I actually just despised them. What's up, Earl? Earl Sams is a, well, he is one of the VGKC collectors. And I mean, He's got some stuff that nobody else has got and probably never will have. And he's also got some other things, some matching sets that I have yet to show you guys because I'm busy enough doing what I'm doing. Once I show you, I know it's going to blow up. I know it's going to go crazy. I know people are going to want them. And I'm not even going to say what they are, but you guys are going to love it when you do see it. Because I will do it eventually. Earl knows what I'm talking about. Hunter Orange. That's right. That's what we got. Wanted something that you wouldn't lose if you sat down while you're field dressing a deer. I don't know if anybody else has done that, but I've done that. Thank you, sir. I have lost knives whilst field dressing a deer in the leaves. Now maybe somebody wants something a little less flashy. That's why I did the green. But the other option is the red, and that's visible in the leaves as well certain times of year. I guess I wouldn't want to drop my my orange-handled Heritage in a pile of hickory leaves at the right time of year, because it'd be gone. Yeah, see, that was the that had the stainless space coral, the silver space coral, right? You too, Earl. Thanks for stopping in. Have a good one, bud. That one of yours, Zach, was the silver space coral, and that is one of those instances that I was thinking of when I said on few occasions do they look right. And I did another knife with the silver space coral and removable screws. It also had the silver screws. I thought it looked better than the black. It just wasn't, the black wasn't the right. It wasn't right. Oh, I haven't put a screw in that one yet. But for the most part, the black just looks cleaner, I guess. That's it. That's all for those. Now we've got 6 assembled knives. Now we have 6 more knives sitting here waiting to be assembled. They've got to go through the same exact process. And rather than sitting here changing belts all day, going back and forth, I'm just going to go ahead and assemble my knives. Actually, we'll do 12 because that's how many. I have 13 sets of screws here. Not enough for 18. So we'll just do 12, and then we'll go do some grinding on some handles. That'll be cool. I know you guys like to see that. That's what I usually do on the live streams is finishing. I don't usually show this process, not because I don't want to, but because in the past the views have been way down when I show this process. People just don't want to see it, or rather just not sit there and watch it. Maybe it's boring. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think? Is this the kind of stuff? Would you rather have live streams filled with this kind of stuff, working and talking, or would you rather see a whole bunch of sparks fly and dust? Genuinely curious. All right, so these guys, we get 2 Grip Tech instead of just 1 each. Of course, there's still 2 over there. But again, even though I'm not planning on going over and cutting this stuff off of these particular handles, I don't know why I just did that. brain fart. I was thinking they were done and drilled, I guess, in my mind. Idiot. See, sometimes I do stuff like this. It's alright. We don't make mistakes. Just happen to make mistakes. I thought about doing like the joys of knife making, like the joy of painting with Bob Ross, like an ASMR kind of deal. This is your knife. It can be anything you want it to be. We don't make mistakes. Just happy little accidents. Do like the colors across the bottom of the screen. Grab a grinder. Make along with me today. Here's the materials that I'm using. Nothing like old pictures of hunting times. Couple more. No bond. Did not bond. I touched it and come right apart. That's what I'd rather them do. I'd rather them just be like kind of just barely on there rather than really stick, because if you were watching earlier, I want them to pop off. I don't want them to get stuck. This one's just being a pain in the nuggets. What's wrong with you? Simmer down. Two more. Stayed that time. Maybe it just can't stand it and still wants to be a pain. We'll find out. We'll get a drill press. Peat hairs everywhere. Okie dokie. Last one. There's so many little micro air leaks in the lines here that air compressor cuts on every couple of minutes, every hour, about half hour probably. How long has it been? 59 minutes. So about once an hour. So it had just cut off before I went live. Get that fixed. All right, last one. And we'll have to do this one more time today. but it's no big deal. Now, let's go back to those drill presses. We don't need the countersink bit. Now I want it to come apart. Seems ridiculous to do all that, just take it apart a whole 30 seconds later, but I've tried just about every way. This is the only way that works consistently. Double-sided tape and clamps, jigs. Stuck to my towel and took a piece of it. It's only the double green micarta that does that. Sticking a little extra hard. Ironic, because I think that was the one that wouldn't stick earlier. Same process as before. This time we'll go to the wire wheel first, which I usually do. Wire wheel, little blue dots off this tang. See, there's no junk on the other side. That's all. Just cleaning the tang up real good. They're already as flat as they can be. Flat as we can get them. Voila. There we go. Tangs are all clean. Now, bandsaw. So I won't be cutting the grip tech. I'll just be doing the micarta. I turn that back on. There we go. That's what the scribed line is for. All right. So I will. I'm going to plug this guy in and just go ahead and cut the ends off of these grip pads. That'll do. Shorten it up a little. All that'll come out pretty easy. Not like micarta, that's for sure. So, now we've got to do that whole splitting thing again. We'll split them all apart. Just like that. Sometimes they protest. Right. Now, we're going to go to the grinder. let's go back over here. Where we now are going to flatten up our G10 liners with our Grip Tech scales here. That'll do it. That'll do it. It's one set. One. Another. Now we can go back and countersink. Go back, countersink, same way we did those other ones. We'll get them all put together, and then we will we'll go ahead and finish these ones out. Right. Okay, here we go. There's one set. Another set. Another set. Pilot screaming. Two more sets. Two more sets, and we'll do something a lot more fun to watch anyway. Maybe you like watching stuff. I don't know. It'll be more fun to do anyway. I know I have more fun at the grinder than I do at the drill press. One more set. One more. go do something more fun. That's all the countersinking. Put you guys over here again. And put all these together. Really. Voila. Two. These will make plenty of dust, considering we didn't cut off much excess. Ooh, I can't wait to see one of these green ones all finished. Might have to snag one of those too. Three, halfway. Debating with myself in my head whether or not I want to go ahead and finish these ones out, or cut some more screws down to fit the next 6. We're 85 minutes into this one. Thing come off. Socket. There's another. 2 more. I think we'll just go ahead and go finish these. Finish them, get them out of the way. That's what I've got it set up for over there, so yeah, we'll just run it. You guys have been waiting around long enough to see this. 12 shouldn't take all that long either. And then it'll be Then it'll be probably 1 o'clock getting these done. 12:45-ish. Alright, one more set hanging out there. I wonder if I dropped a screw or something. So there's another extra screw there. I don't see an extra screw sitting anywhere. Post. Alright. Now we will go. What's up, Ground Fog? We will go to the grinder. I'm going to put all these down here. Let's go to the grinder. Let's go do something fun. You guys have been sitting here watching enough of the boring, tedious work. Let's turn this vacuum on. Here we go. Gotta do the grip tech first. They are cool. Right. Push grinder. care, Zach? Let's go over there. I'm messy now. Okay. Scotch Brite. right, now, go back to the big wheel. 400 grit. There we go. Whatever I did with the last 400s. Okay. I don't know what happened, but there is no power. No. Well, I guess I'm done for now. I'll see you guys on the next one. I will go live and I'll go live again later today as long as everything comes back up, but something happened. I don't know. I'm going to go inside and check the house. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.